The second article of One D&D is here, and call me Billy Bandwagon because we're going to talk about it. Now, both of my viewers from my previous One D&D examination may recall that I find these in-depth looks at the playtest content a little tiresome. I mean, truly, if One D&D is a finished portrait, then what we are examining currently is two ovals on a piece of sketch paper. With all that being said, the most recent document is focusing on some changes to character classes, specifically Bard, Ranger, and Rogue, with the three of them being placed in a group known as expert classes. I'm not sure what exactly the Bard is an expert of, but I'm pretty sure I can't show it on YouTube. So you may find yourself asking, what the hell is an expert class? And that is an excellent question that perfectly accentuates how smart and attractive you are, dear viewer, as I wink at you and motion towards the like and subscribe buttons. Expert classes are just a name, a grouping, one of four boxes the classes will seemingly be placed into for the One D&D revisions. Experts contain bards, rangers, and rogues. Mages contain sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. And priests contain paladins, druids, and clerics. And finally, warriors include barbarians, fighters, and monks. Oh, and there's some text at the bottom saying that artificers are experts, like an afterthought, like they got to the end and remembered artificers existed and just threw them in the box. So what is with these new boxes? Why do we have class groups now, and why did they call the first one experts? An expert class conjures images of something exclusive that must be earned. It already creates more questions than it answers. May I recommend something like specialists or tossers? And the description doesn't clear anything up at all. Polymaths who have the expertise feature and elements of other classes. That's a lot of words to say good with skills, and also rangers are there too. But I digress. The purpose of the class groups, if the document is to be believed, is to group together similar class types to more easily portion out magical items and feats, labeling them as available for specific class groups. There also seems to be an attempt to create a set of group roles for forming parties. However, if that is the case, there are some arguments that could be made about the grouping here. And the expert group really gives off a and the rest vibe for the classes that fit poorly into other roles. Really, most of this is just nitpicking in terms of effect on actual gameplay mechanics and roleplay. It's a fart in a whirlpool. So, like the folks at Focus Business, let's talk about the horrors of class change. Now, each of these goes super in-depth, but I'm going to touch on the major changes in broad strokes, starting with the Bard. The initial description is pretty bare bones. Bards are experts who use charisma. Bold choices are being made here. When we launch right into the leveling guide, an eagle-eyed viewer might notice an immediate trend. Ability increases are out and feats are in. If I had to pick a subtitle for One D&D's character creation philosophy, it would be, don't you love feet? Or feats? The race background selections are piled with feat options, and there seems to be a heavier focus on feats throughout the One D&D articles. But anyway, back to bards. A new feature changing right out the gate is Bardic Inspiration. It's been altered slightly into a reaction ability rather than a buff. In addition to this, you can also use your Bardic Inspiration to heal an ally after they take damage, freeing up Bard's bonus actions and giving them a bit more utility. Song of Rest has been changed to Song of Restoration. It grants Bards healing spells without taking up their number of prepared spells. The ability allows access to more powerful healing spells at higher levels. Basically, your Bard will never have an excuse not to have a healing spell again. Also, overall, Bard spellcasting has received the Cleric and Druid treatment, allowing them to know all of their available spells, but only having a few prepared spells that they can shuffle after a long rest. Level 20 abilities have been moved to level 18, and level 20 now grants an epic boon, a kind of super feat. Don't you love feats? We also get a look at the College of Lore subclass. Most of this remains the same. 6th level ability has been added in Cunning Inspiration. It grants the ability to roll your inspiration dice twice and make the higher result. The 10th ability has been changed from Further Magical Secrets to Improved Cutting Words, allowing the bard to deal psychic damage when they use cutting words. Peerless skill is mostly the same, but if you fail, you get to keep your Bardic Inspiration now. However, with Bardic Inspiration switching to a reaction type ability, this makes Peerless skill seem kind of weak, like a Bardic Inspiration but for you. Next up, we get into Rangers, and Rangers have been through a bit of an overhaul. The short version is they've had a lot of pointless stuff kind of stripped out, the really specialized stuff of only being useful in a specific terrain against a specific type of monster. They've had a lot of the optional abilities made not so optional. Their spell casting has been added to level 1, and they've also received the cleric treatment, which seems to be an ongoing trend across the board. There is a lot to cover here, and I don't think I'll get to all of it and keep this video at a reasonable length. But I will say, the class does seem a bit unfocused and underwhelming at the moment. I just feel like the ranger class doesn't have a clear direction and theme like the other classes. And I feel like this is kind of an ongoing problem with the ranger. And it seems to not just be limited to D&D. Either way, I think I'm going to make another video about rangers specifically and changes to the class and just difficulties that have dogged them for years. But look for that at a later date. In the meantime, if you're interested in deeper understanding of ranger changes, I recommend checking it out in the PDF. Anyway, on to rogues. For the most part, rogues are more of the same. A few changes in the wording, a new ability at level 13 called Subtle Strikes, where you get advantage every time an enemy stands to an ally. Basically gives rogues pack tactics. After that, we have a few changes to their Thief subclass again. We have some wording changes. A few things added. Fast Hands now allows you to use the search action as a bonus action. Use Magical Device has been reworked to allow more attunement slots, and bonuses for expending charges on magical items, and bonuses for using spell scrolls. Also, the Steady Aim ability has been removed, which makes me wonder why they didn't just give it to Rangers if they were going to take it away from Rogues. So there you have it. 3 classes, 2 sets of minor tweaks, and 1 major overhaul. There is also several pages of his feats to examine, with a few of them getting reworded and reworked, but I'm already on page 3 of this script, and I want to do editing me a favor by keeping it brief. Don't you love feats? You can check them out at your leisure. So, in the end, what does this all mean? Well, in all honesty, not so much. If the final version of One D&D is a beautiful tree, then we're currently looking at some seeds in a pot. But this does solidify some of the broader themes of One D&D. They seem to be putting an emphasis on simplification and a focus on feats and abilities. Overall, I find that most of the changes are positive. Even the idea of organizing classes into groups will potentially allow more magical item options for classes that were generally left out in the cold when it came to magical items. My only apprehension continues from the last document. I worry about new player environment with all these new focuses on deeper customization. If the idea is to push players to jump into using feats with both feet, then much of the success of that will hinge on the ability to make feats easier to understand and accessible to everyone. In the end, I imagine we'll see plenty more changes to what we see in this document, particularly with Rangers. The current changes are a little underwhelming, and they likely want to avoid getting into the same situation where they're just having to patch on new subclasses in hopes that one of them makes things more interesting. So I suppose in the end, really time will tell how much of this actually makes it into any final version of what we're going to play in 2024. As for me, I'm going to think long and hard about what is to be done about our dear friends, the Ranger. Till next time, everybody, puck out.